Thank you for tuning in to Canal Algérie's nightly news. On to the headlines. The President of the Republic receives the Mauritanian Foreign Affairs Minister bearing a message from his country's head of state. The President of the Republic receives a phone call from his Czech counterpart tackling bilateral cooperation and several files stopped by the Palestinian cause. Army General Said Chingriha, the Minister Delegate to the Minister of National Defense, carries on his official visit to India. Our history window is devoted tonight to the colonial presence of France in the African continent. Welcome back. We begin with tonight's top story as the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, received today the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Cooperation and Mauritanians Abroad, Mohammed Salim Ould Marzouk, carrying a message from the President of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, Mohammed Ould Sheikh Al Ghazouani. The audience took place in the presence of the Principal Private Secretary to the Presidency of the Republic, Boualem Boualem, and the Minister of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs, the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Ahmed Attaf. Following the audience, the Mauritanian Foreign Minister had this to say to our reporter.
I have the honor to be received by the President of the Algerian Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune. During the meeting, I conveyed to him the greetings of his brother, President of Mauritania, Mohammed Ould Al Ghazouani, and handed to him as well a written message. President Tebboune tasked me to convey his greetings as well to the President of Mauritania. The visit comes in the framework of permanent consultations between both countries relating to bilateral issues and cooperation, which has witnessed a great stride over the past few years. In addition to issues pertaining to the current situation in the Muslim and Arab nation and in the world being marked by tensions. The President stressed the necessity of consultations between the two brotherly countries bound with historic ties, with geographical, civilization and blood dimensions as well. I thank the President for his last visit to Mauritania to attend the Youth, Education and Employment Summit. He had in fact a key role. I reiterated to him the President's keenness to move forward to consolidate bilateral cooperation between both countries.
السنوات الأخيرة وكذلك أيضا تشاور حول القضايا التي تهم وخاصة في هذا الوضع الحالي الأمة العربية والجيش.
The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, also received a phone call from the President of the Republic of Czechia, Peter Pavel, during which reinforcing bilateral relations, notably in economic and military cooperation, was evoked. While discussing regional and international developments, both presidents noted convergence in views on the Palestinian issue and the two-state solution, while also expressing their wishes for stability and progress for the Syrian people. On the same occasion, the President of the Republic reiterated his invitation for the Czech President to visit Algeria, which was accepted by President Pavel, a visit that will enable the holding of the Algerian-Czech Joint High Committee to discuss issues of interest to both countries. On the second day of his official visit to India, Army General Said Chingriha, Minister Delegate to the National Defense Minister, Chief of Staff of the People's National Army, toured Goa Shipyard Limited at the invitation of Army General Anil Chauhan, India's Chief of Defense Staff. Manal Ma'afo.
After being welcomed by the director of this industrial company, Army General Said Chingriha, Minister Delegate to the Ministry of National Defense and the PNA Chief of Staff, visited an exhibition of photographs and models that illustrate the construction of ships within this company, including library photos of the various stages of the development of the naval industry in India, as well as plans and technical diagrams highlighting the technologies used in the construction of modern ships. Subsequently, the director of this industrial company presented to the Army General and the delegation accompanying him a detailed explanation on the various missions, departments and production of this important industrial establishment. The Army General received explanations provided by military engineers and experts on the material used, the armament systems, as well as the defensive and offensive capabilities of these ships. The Army General then visited the various workshops of the shipyard, where he received detailed explanations on the working methods and advanced technologies available to this establishment, before the General of the Army and the director of the company exchanged symbolic gifts. Later on, Army General Said Shingiriha went to the Air Naval Base of Goa, where he was welcomed by the commander of the base, the Rear Admiral Ajay Etiophilios.
Good! John's load! Slamet!
After the welcoming ceremony, Army General Said Shingiriha received detailed briefing on the base's operational missions and its strategic role in securing Indian territorial waters and airspace. The briefing focused on surveillance systems control and coordination between naval and air forces for joint missions. At the end of the visit, the Army General and Rear Admiral Ajay Etiophilios exchanged symbolic gifts.
In other news, the Minister of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Ahmed Attaf, received the Minister of Foreign Affairs Cooperation and Mauritanians Abroad, Mohammed Salim Ould Marzouk. The meeting was the occasion to review bilateral relations between both countries and means to reinforce it on so many levels. In the midst of the second phase of the ceasefire negotiations, notably in Gaza, and continuing up the repercussions of the war imposed on it, Algeria expresses hope that the efforts of the mediation group will continue with international support to ensure its consolidation and full implementation. The MFA also noted that Algeria expresses categorical rejection of the circulated plans to displace and empty Gaza of its population as part of a broader plan aimed at striking the Palestinian national project in its core. Algeria also reiterates its firm belief that the lasting and final settlement to this conflict is this two-state formula agreed upon internationally and enabling the Palestinian people to establish their independent and sovereign state. The same source added that Algeria stresses the inevitability of unifying the Palestinian territories from Gaza to the West Bank and occupied Al-Quds within the Palestinian national project, and any attempts against so will only result in the prolonging of the conflict and suffering of Palestinians and instability in the entire region. To the Algerian-Nigerian cooperation, now due to be upgraded by a training program to the benefit of young diplomats of this friendly country. This initiative is meant to predict and cope with the complex diplomatic challenges marking the current international scene. More details with Mili Salila Balaman.
Upgrading diplomatic skills for better international representation is the objective of this training program designed for officials from Niger's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The program includes negotiation techniques, protocol, and administrative and diplomatic writing, initiated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in collaboration with the Institute of Diplomacy and International Relations. This training is part of efforts to strengthen cooperation between Algeria and Niger. It reflects the commitment of both countries to developing expertise and enhancing diplomatic capacities.
The trainers for this program have been carefully selected. They will be supported in their mission by former ambassadors to Niger who will provide valuable contributions to the program.
This training focuses on 3 essential areas aimed at improving diplomatic competitiveness and responsiveness.
Au-delà de l'administration diplomatique.
Beyond diplomatic administration, this training aims to enable participants to enhance their skills in various fields, such as drafting and developing diplomatic documents, as well as preparing international negotiations, whether political, economic, bilateral or multilateral. I am confident that with this type of training, we will be better equipped to anticipate challenges and meet the demands of our era, marked by increasingly complex and interconnected issues.
Et à répondre aux exigences de notre époque marquée par des défis de plus en plus connexes et complexes.
This training, offered by Algeria's Ministry of Foreign Affairs for the benefit of Niger's Ministry of Foreign Affairs officials, will span 11 days. During this period, participants will receive comprehensive training to prepare them to excel in diplomatic fields.
Coming up in our news edition. The general strike is going on in Morocco in an attempt to remedy several social and professional issues paralyzing the country. The French justice cancelled the forced deportation of an Algerian influencer and ordered his release, a blow to the far right in the Interior Minister's attempts to arbitrarily expel immigrants living in France. The Algerian influencer benefited from release after the decision to deport him from France was cancelled. To our daily history window, devoted tonight to France's presence in Africa, marked by resources theft and plundering and shady deals. Now, Africa is aware of its wealth and is determined to set its own path forward. More with Midasa Lila Balaman.
Anglophone Africa represents 1% of our foreign trade, the same as Francophone Africa and North Africa. The entire African continent accounts for just 3% of our foreign trade.
The statements made by this French diplomat about the weakness of his country's trade with Africa are contradictory to reality. While some official sources estimate that France's market share in Africa does not exceed 3%, major French companies continue to exploit and plunder the continent's natural resources, particularly oil and gas, either directly or through ambiguous agreements.
10 million, 100 million years of work done by Earth to transform algae into oil. Those years are free, so we will find oil under extraordinarily cheap conditions and sell it at a high price because it competes with other energy sources. This differential is enormous. Oil today, roughly speaking, costs us an average of $3 or $4 to extract, and we sell it at 80.
On est à un pétrole grossièrement aujourd'hui, mettons en moyenne à 3-4 dollars qui sort, et puis on le vend à 80.
The company ELF, repeatedly accused of fraud, invests heavily in Africa by taking advantage of tax breaks and legal loopholes. It extracts oil at low cost in resource-rich regions and then sells it at high prices on international markets without making a fair contribution to local economies.
In 1966, they extracted, they exploited, but they never paid a single dime. How is that possible? Well, that's how it is, because since it's uranium, we aren't allowed to say anything. And the moment we try to ask, to speak up, we are silenced for years, from 1966 until today.
On nous fait taire. Absolument. Depuis 1966 jusqu'aujourd'hui.
We know that the villages right next to where this uranium comes from can't even have electricity.
Today, Africa, aware of the exploitation and domination it has suffered at the hands of France for decades, is rising to assert its capacity for rebirth. The continent now refuses to be a playground for foreign interests and is resolutely advancing towards reclaiming its sovereignty.
The Moroccan repression in the occupied Sahrawi territories goes on with a complete blackout policy adopted by the Makhzen regime to hide the truth, despite the multiple attempts made by foreign journalists and members of parliament to take stock of the situation on the ground. Salim Mirah reports.
According to the Association for the Protection of Sahara Pioneers detained in Moroccan prisons, the authorities reject the presence of observers, journalists and even human rights defenders. Case in point, these figures illustrating the censorship policy implemented by the Makhzen, particularly between 2014 and 2025. 307 foreign activists and human rights defenders and journalists were expelled from the territory, including European MPs and representatives of the Basque Parliament, who want to visit occupied Laayoune to assess the humanitarian situation there. In addition, 7 international non-governmental human rights organizations were denied access to the occupied Sahrawi territory. These measures are part of the Makhzen strategy meant to hide the reality of the violations committed, stifling any dissenting voice and imposing a single narrative on the human rights situation and the exploitation of Sahrawi resources. The repeated exactions and the crimes committed are a reality experienced by Sahrawi prisoners detained in Moroccan jails in inhumane conditions.
A general strike erupts in Morocco as workers protest a restrictive labor reform, soaring prices and declining wages with no dialogue in sight. Tensions are at a breaking point, according to Manal Maafa in this report.
Big Moroccan cities witnessed a large-scale and general strike initiated by the Moroccan Labour Confederation, which gathers the country's different trade union organizations. The people partaking in this strike protested against the high cost of living and the absence of the Makhzen regime amid the societal turmoil. The adoption of the law on the right to strike, deemed oppressive and seen as an attack on constitutional rights, was the last straw.
This law, opposed by the majority of political parties and civil society, is labeled unconstitutional, and on top of this, it contradicts the international conventions ratified by Morocco. The situation is alarming. The prices keep on rising and the unemployment rate is higher than ever before. Imposing this law only makes things go from bad to worse.
According to experts, the socio-economic crisis is directly linked to the Makhzen's inability to implement efficient policies to meet the citizens' needs. This incapacity is also accompanied by an endemic corruption, a plundering of public funds, and the repression of associations specialized in fighting financial crimes.
The strike is organized following a conflict between the government and the different trade unions. According to these ladders, the government fulfilled none of its promises. Such a strike was not organized in Morocco for several years. It came now following an unprecedented surge in prices, and the deaf ear of the Makhzen completely turned regarding Moroccans and their grievances.
وتهرب الحكومة من مسؤوليتها.
The Moroccan Labour Union is relying on the mobilization of trade union organizations to paralyze the country's public and private sectors for 48 hours, hoping to make its voice heard and achieve its objectives.
Sports now. USS Steve progressed to the quarter-final round of the Cup competition after 1-0 victory over Amal Al-Alma. The second qualifier to the same stage is ES Mostagana, victorious over US Biskra with 2-1.
بوكريت والترجي والإصابة الأولى اللي بالخدم إيمان بوزيان في تنفيذ الكرة الثابتة هدف التعادل.
With that, we end tonight's bulletin. Thank you for watching. Take care.